The oceans are a fairly scary place for humanity, with marine biologists having violated the natural order of things. With our marginal ability to swim, unless you are actively trained and conditioned to do so, drowning is a very real threat. However, that is not the only danger that lurks. There are many things in the water that would look at humanity as food for the simple fact that we literally swim like an injured animal. These animals, that may view us as such, are sharks. Sharks have existed longer than most other animals and have even existed longer than there have been trees on land. These animals, while extremely freaky, aren't necessarily seeking out humans to eat, but they will consume Homo sapiens if the opportunity arises, because most of them actually are opportunistic predators. With that said, we have come to understand their habits as well as how they behaviorally operate, and as a result, we now kind of take precautions that prevent the unwanted outcomes. One of the best ways to do this is don't go into saltwater where they live. But the problem is, life tends to adapt sometimes through something as simple as just exposure. In the events of Under Paris, we see just this. As the sharks are exposed to France 2.0, also known as the garbage patch that's floating out in the Pacific Ocean, oh lord, here comes the hate mail, this will begin altering an individual from the mako shark species, taking on new traits that would allow it to absolutely dominate its surrounding environment and possibly lead to the extinction of many native life forms of fish. It also would take on new adaptations that allowed it to move inland. But how is this possible, and what is the feasibility of this happening? Let's take a look at the life that has already done this and how these traits arose in today's episode. But before starting, if you enjoy this content, leaving a like is greatly appreciated, and subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on when I post. Also, I cannot completely bash France. They did help us stomp the British back in 1776, and I still don't think we ever really repaid them back for that, so there is some level of based within the French. Moving on. We kick off our story with a statement of the species that survive aren't the strongest or the most intelligent, but rather the ones who best adapt to change, or the gigachads like humanity. We are quite literally the jack of all trades animal. With that said, adaptations will be today's topic. As we zoom out, we are in the North Pacific. A large mass of garbage is floating in the ocean, as we all know, with it being France 2.0 as we pan out. We really should be cleaning that thing up before the microplastics in our testicles and ovaries render us completely sterile. That's right, they did a study last month where they found 25 out of 25 participants, and I mean, that number may have been off. I think maybe it was actually 21 of 21 participants, I can't remember specifically. All I remember it was 100% of them had microplastics in their testicles, and we aren't even sure what the effects are. What a time to be alive as I sit here drinking from a plastic water bottle. This is truly our era's Roman-led aqueducts. Anyhow, as a woman runs up, they said that they just got a signal. Gearing up to dive, they go into the trash as they are headed in for one reason or another, which is just a wonderful idea. Diving in, oh yeah, there's some trash. Actually, nature is rather interesting because there is a bacteria that is beginning to eat this plastic. This is also an example of how life adapts to things that we might not have originally thought it could have. Known as Adionella sacaiensis, it's probably how you pronounce that, it's a gram-negative rod-shaped bacteria that actually naturally evolved to eat certain types of plastics. Now that does sound amazing, but obviously something we need to keep an eye on because we don't want this to actually spread out of control and begin affecting, oils that we use to produce plastics. That's not going to be an ideal situation. But it highlights that the layer of plastic existing in the layer of soil affectionately known as the Holocene era may eventually be eaten away by life. Hopefully we never go extinct though. So as they swim through, they're looking for something. Finding a broken net, a whale was caught in there. They say that it must have suffered for days, but I'm fairly certain it would have drowned within just a few hours. The record is 222 minutes for a whale holding its breath. I mean, it is near the surface, so maybe that's why it suffered for days. But as they approach it, he grabs onto it and sees it was eating plastic and there was a huge wound on its side. As Chris checks his watch, a shark then buzzes the tower. More mako sharks show up to eat as they appear to be hunting in packs, which is a little bit different. There's hypertrophy on their face, delineating them from normal, as they are also all female. This would be of great interest as it seems this shark may actually be better at hunting than normal. On sharks, especially on the head and snout region, exists the ampullae of Lorenzini, and basically these are just electroreception receptors. These receptors cover the area and sit in these jelly-filled sensor organs. Their purpose is to detect extremely faint electrical fields. It is similar to if you run your hand over the hairs on your arm, you can feel that something is there without them touching your skin. This process allows for sharks to hunt in the dark or murky waters by feeling what's in front of them with a fair amount of distance in between them and that thing so they can then close in. This is also why they take exploratory bites, sometimes on humans, to figure out what something is before going in to actually eat. Actually, when I was just a youngling, I had something horrifying happen. Basically, I believe I was in murky, it was kind of murky ocean waters, and something big ran into me and was swimming around me and my brother. It wasn't an exploratory bite, but to this day, I don't know what it was, My soul left my body, I'm pretty sure. And even if a tiny little fish, if I'm standing in ankle deep water and like the smallest of fish bites at my toes or something, instant freak out. I don't know, I can't control it. It's basically pure primal fear. Anyway, so as the team watches, the big one comes out of the darkness. Why did y'all go in there? Taking a look at the shark is well over 21 feet long, or around 7 meters. 3 months ago, the shark was only 2.5 meters in heathen units, or about roughly 8 feet in the Lord's units. Also, to that one guy who got upset that I made that joke, you just gotta be new here, bro. These comments are designed to be stupid, yet violently patriotic at the same time. So now typically, mako sharks will top out at around 12 feet long, or roughly 4 meters. Not only would the time frame indicate growth has been set into maximum overdrive, possibly even springing for the turbo, but the maximum size of the mako shark has been increased by almost double. This would indicate that the endocrine system has begun being affected by something. Something to note about plastics in general is actually there's a lot of chemicals in them. We still aren't even sure what these are doing to our bodies, let alone animals who are actively eating them. What is known, however, is that these microplastics releasing these chemicals can work to disrupt the function of the endocrine system. This can be done in several ways, but one of the ways this may be happening to increase the size of the shark, given the hypertrophy of the snout region, as mentioned, is the chemicals have induced cancer in critical areas of the brain. In humans, growth is mediated predominantly by growth hormone. However, it has been seen that if cancer were to form on, say, the pituitary gland, then this can cause a steady release of human growth hormone. In humans with gigantism or acromegaly, this can almost cause a second form of puberty to kick off after an adult has concluded their first round. This will begin to change the facial structures of the person. This causes basically long bone growth plates to reactivate, increasing height and limb length, and in general, cause tissue to increase in size. This is why people who are bodybuilding also take human growth hormone and steroids. It sounds great, but our bodies were actually never designed to do this. Not the steroids and human growth hormone, but just the increase in size. Don't do that crap. Stay natty. It's the best way to do it. Anyways, as a result, many issues arise such as nerve damage, strain on the heart, and circulatory system problems. And as the process continues, this can ultimately lead to a person's end. A shark is no different. Should a cancer form affecting its endocrine system producing an overabundance of shark growth hormone, then it is possible that the shark may be reaching an indeterminate size. And considering how sharks can get as big as megalodons, that is not something we want roaming the ocean. This size increase, however, would not really be an adaptation to the environment, but more of a consequence of chemicals leaching off of the plastic that is breaking down. And given that it was in the area, it would be exposed to these chemicals where it may have developed cancer. Which, in and of itself, is highly disturbing because if you were not aware, sharks have an extremely difficult time getting cancer. Their immune system is incredibly adept at finding and destroying cancer cells, and there's a myth though that they do not at all get cancer and is just that, a myth. This means that something must be going on. But because the shark appears to have grown, indicating the endocrine system is disrupted, that means the immune system may be functionally hindered as well, and it's having difficulty doing its job. As a result, it's kind of a which came first, the chicken or the egg sort of scenario. I believe the chemicals in the microplastics first disrupted the immune function, possibly causing the natural killer T cells to become less adept and functionally more subdued. From here, a cancer formed in the pituitary gland, allowing for the growth that we see. However, what we will see later is 100% a new adaptation that may be the result of disruption of the actual genomic structure of the shark, resulting in new coding allowing for this population to absolutely explode. So back to the movie, at this point, Chris moves in to get a sample from a 21-foot shark. No thanks. Approaching her, he then spears her as she swims off but returns back for vengeance. Mako sharks can swim at like 25 miles per hour and are hydrodynamically designed. She begins buzzing the tower as Chris gets grabbed and then dragged off, as one by one they all start getting absolutely shreked by sharks. Looking out, blood is everywhere, baby! Sharks can typically smell a drop of blood in a pool or 1 part per 10 billion parts, but remember, blood is a physical matter. It's not like when it drops into the water, the shark, like at the other side of the pool, can instantly smell it. It takes time to move through the water and be detected by them. Anyhow, Sophia decides that, okay, I'm gonna go in. Why? What are you gonna do against a 21-foot shark? So anyways, what could possibly go wrong with jumping in the chummed up water that was formerly your team? I don't know, but seeing an arm float in the water, yeah, they're already gone and there's no reason that you need to be in the water with a giant shark, so great plan. What was the actual thought process here? So looking out, the big one approaches but doesn't immediately attack. As it comes in though, she ends up trying to spear it as it swims past her, and then a net latches onto Sophia as the shark dives. Typically, you would not be surviving this. Her eardrums then burst as she remembers, oh yeah, I have a knife, and then frees herself as she begins to swim up, and you would most definitely not be able to pull that off from how deep that thing just brought you underneath the water. It's just not happening, bro. So anyways, as she swims up, she does emerge, spitting out the Kool-Aid that was left in France 2.0. Meanwhile, back over at France 1.0, two men are skimming the water with a magnet as they pull up a literal mortar round from World War II, which is actually a real thing. Be careful out there. The squad disarmed it as the cops then take off on their boat. Over at an aquarium, they are doing an expose on the oceans and trash. Lots of real fun topics. A kid asks if her team was eaten by sharks, which obviously rustles Sophia's jimmies, as then the kid needs to be smacked. Uh-oh, I said the K word, which means this is demonetized now. Nice. A woman then follows her yelling out, "Oh, Beacon 7, saying that, "Oh, I know where it's at." She's a part of like Save Our Seas, like an ocean defense organization. I don't know, it's entering a room. They're just projecting videos of sharks for some reason. It's very stupid. It looks really disorganized as well. Anyways, maybe I'm judging a little too harshly. So now we meet Ben, who tracked Beacon 7. It shows that the beacon is in the rivers of France. A shark literally is in the heart of Paris. The sharks can actually breed in freshwater, even with it being a mako shark. And now, for some sharks, this really isn't that strange, I suppose you could say. Like take bull sharks, for instance. This particular shark can actually swim up rivers and breed in freshwater habitats, as well as just straight up live up there. They are known also as river sharks. Did you think the rivers were safe? Because I did. You buffoon, you fell for a classic blunder. So you may be asking yourself at this point, well, why is it such a big deal that sharks move from saltwater to freshwater? And for that, you need to understand osmosis. If you were to take a bag that was permeable to water and then fill it with distilled water and place it in salt water, the bag would shrivel. If you did the same for a saltwater bag and placed it in distilled water, it would swell. This is because water wants to go to an area of higher salinity, and salts want to go to an area of lower salinity. With freshwater fish, they exist in low salt environments so that their bodies have evolved to hold onto salt for dear life and then excrete water. For saltwater fish, their bodies have evolved to hold onto water and excrete salt to stay alive. So if you took them and plopped each other into one another's environment, freshwater fish would desiccate quickly as they excrete water and retain salts, and saltwater fish would swell and expand as they hold onto water and excrete their salts. This would ultimately result in the end of the fish's life. This is the basis for how this problem takes sharks out. A simple flow of water in versus water out. With sharks that can move from saltwater to freshwater and vice versa, the pumps on their gills and in the rest of their body to maintain homeostasis can actually be reversed. This allows for them to exist in that environment. However, this was a process that took some time and required sharks that adapted to these environments to likely be near freshwater areas and then seek them out. Sort of similar to like how lungfish would come up on land for the first time. It didn't just hang out permanently, but may have done so in order to escape predators, which allowed over the ensuing eons to stay longer and longer, eventually resulting in amphibians, according to the theory of evolution. Sharks may have followed a similar pathway, but instead of it being like air that they moved into, it would just be sort of like moving into fresh water. This would have taken multiple generations adapting to the environment, becoming more fit for it through successes that their offspring had. One mako shark immediately gaining this trait would be a massive mutation in the structure coding for its ability, which, in all honesty, it makes very little sense. You are talking about pumping structures to maintain its homeostasis that randomly just happened to form, and for this, I believe it kind of maybe needs to be something else. It has been known for some time that occasionally sharks will interbreed. This creates a hybridized species, which may be what we are seeing here. The mako shark, for one reason or another, at least the parent of the mako shark, may have mated with a shark, allowing for it to create this new hybridized shark, which in turn afforded it the ability to enter the freshwater areas without too much detriment. We see sometimes species will do this, like a liger or a mule or a zedonk, which is stupid. The better name is a zonkey. However, sharks, they're not really known to do this with that much space between their species' tree branches. It kind of makes things difficult, but it's not entirely unheard of. For instance, the Australian black-tipped shark and the common black-tipped shark, which, I mean, they sound really related, but there's some distance between them. They're actually breeding or interbreeding in Australia, creating hybridized sharks. So it'd likely be similar to Homo sapiens banging Neanderthal out of existence, right? Neanderthal was pretty far, but obviously you could still create viable young. For one reason or another, it seems the ability to reproduce with a freshwater shark was possible for the mako progenitor, which then created Lilith, as they call it. This mating could have also contributed to the increase in size as well, considering it is bigger than both parents. Again, look at the liger for an example of that. It is bigger than both of its parents. So this may also be how the reproduction was affected, as we will see shortly. Okay, so for some reason, Ocean Defense Woman is convinced she can literally communicate with a shark, right? Like, how do you suspect that? What a statement. They then get like a radio call about how a car went off a bridge and apparently the driver was never found. Yes, that means it has to be a shark. And I can already tell this movie is just gonna give me an irrational fear of rivers now. Having like just giant sharks in it. Sort of like when you were an offspring and you thought the pool had sharks in it. Totally irrational, didn't make any sense. It's just human brain go burr sometimes. Then again, bull sharks are in rivers and they will absolutely chow down on you given the chance. So that night, as Sophia looks through her old stuff, she finds a video of her squad. Some of the videos of them celebrating New Year's during the day for some reason, as then she gets footage of when her team was turned into mincemeat. So she closed the laptop at that point like, oh, whoops, didn't mean to see that. It's like opening your parents' laptop or something and seeing something horrible. Checking the beacon, it really do be in Paris though. So as Earth Defense Force 5 heads out on the river, they chose nighttime to enter the dark, polluted, gross city waters to communicate with the shark. Everyone here just makes bad choices and has an affinity for being torn apart, and that's why you get eaten by sharks. So lock and loading brides the cry, she falls backwards out of the boat because if you fall forwards, you just land back in the boat. Oh yeah, we're doing it. Diving down, she then finds the car, but no sign of anyone. She also finds the door has been bitten in the pattern of shark teeth. So now she's shark bait. Ooh ha ha. Feeling someone wants to sell her something, she turns around but sees nothing there. Also, if they knew the car went over, why didn't they just pull it out of the water? So at this point, Ben sees the cops are on them as the gal removes her line so that Ben can escape. She then sees the outline of the shark, bro just get into the car. But then she sees the boat is above her and elects to stay below the water. Intelligent. They then shine a light on her as she emerges as they pull her out of the water as Sophia arrives in time to see that she's being pulled away and the shark is nearby. Towing her boat, they question why she was diving in the middle of the night and she says that she was cleaning up the sin. They're bringing her in to make sure that she checks out. Not exactly sure how she's going to check out. I mean, I guess maybe check for warrants, but how are they going to confirm that the diver in the water wasn't just actually diving and cleaning like a total weirdo? So they stop off to check on the rest of the team at the homeless camp and everyone is super jazzed to see the cops as then they hand stuff out. And I'm not sure if that actually happens over there, like this is real life or not. Usually the situations aren't the same over here. Anyways, heading back to the floating police station, they bring her in. Sophia now approaches the homeless camp later as the dog is alone and barking. Her beacon is going off and there's a book in the river as the shark swims away. So, did they all just like go into the water and get eaten? Like, let me see if I understand this, right? These homeless people all entered the water at night when it's obviously cold out due to it appearing to be early spring, and they were getting their jackets and clothing that they were all eaten. Or were they just hanging out near it and the shark jumped up and ate them? How does this work? This has to be one of those moments that's like, it was just put in there because? Like, what sort of stupidity would I have had to have witnessed for this to go down? Okay, we're gonna move on because it's gonna get stupid later. So after being at the police station all night, they finally decide to ask her, okay, well, why were you diving? He asks her why she was searching for the car, and she says that there's a shark in the Seine. The other cop comes out saying, oh, we have an emergency, as Sophia keeps tracking the shark. As she does, a shark is like right off of the waters next to a youngling, and it would have been nice to maybe set the tone for how all those homeless people got eaten. Sophia yells out for her to get away from the water as the dad's like, what is wrong with you? Sophia then gets a call from someone as the shark swims in the distance. The cops have called to Sophia as the other girl narked. They found a guy torn up and it looks like a shark attack. It was the homeless guy from earlier, and bro, how did he enter the water? It doesn't make any sense. He had his clothes on. Did he get in with his clothes on? This is just exceptionally stupid. Surely the others, after watching, this guy also got caught, right? So one guy gets eaten. Would they have not just been like, you know what, let's get away from the water's edge. We just watched this other guy get totally bit in half. Good lord. So Sophia says it was definitely a shark that did this. Evidently, a beluga whale did the same thing earlier and it didn't eat anyone. It just kind of swam up the river. So she's like, oh, you didn't care when it was a beluga? Yeah, no kidding there, gal. It's a beluga whale, not a 21-foot shark. So Sophia talks to the chief, telling her the shark is in the river. Sophia says the shark's behavior isn't normal and something is wrong with it. So one of the problems we're actually seeing with this shark in real life is the microplastics build up in their bodies and their behavioral changes. And this is likely due to the hormonal signaling in their bodies, but the point is that it may be making them more aggressive and cause them to do things like swim up freshwater rivers. So this actually does check out, and there may be changes with this hybridized shark. So the police now come up with this brilliant idea, right? Their plan is to enter the water to search for the shark. All right, it might be a stupid idea, but remember, everyone is super jazzed to get eaten. Sophia says this is pretty much useless to do as we could just use the tracker, so the actual intelligent thing that prevents you from being eaten. But everyone is super ready to be shark bait, ooh ha ha, and again, like most of my videos, these are not human decisions like at all. They elect to ignore the tracker as Sophia says, yeah, I'll go with you just so I can watch you guys get eaten. Boating out, old blue hair gives chase following the tracker as well. Sophia then calls out saying that she should be right here. As they look around, they see nothing, typically because sharks like to live under the water, usually anyhow. Which is stupid, because the homeless people still got eaten. The water's only 15 feet deep. Whatever. It's about 5 meters deep. It's very shallow for a shark. The homeless people would have not gone into the water. The cops all suit up and become shark chow as they fall out the back of the boat, and this is because if they fall entering the greenish water, I'm certain that it is not actually the river because it would be way nastier. Searching along the bottom, they come across the usual suspects: a chair, a rock, a human skeleton, but they see no shark. Evidently, they synced up all their trackers, and as they look out before spotting one of the ugliest fish I have ever seen, its stomach was bit off. Ouchies. So the best time to get out of the water would have been before you even entered. The second best time is right now. Looking around, they find a grate. Blue Hair then calls out telling Ben to drop the signal because they're going to kill her. And she's entirely misreading the situation. Really, she has no idea what's going on and is a total doucher for this. Meanwhile, the shark then swims past the grate. For some reason, Ben doesn't know if the beacon will reactivate. Like, she's like, oh, I don't know if we could restart it. Did the other ones reactivate? I mean, you got them going. I think it shouldn't be a problem, right? So while the team sits there, the shark approaches from behind, but they miss her. Nice. And then begins circling as Ben disconnects the beacon. Wow, way to go, guys. You just took out all the cops. Checking the signal on Sophia's computer, she lost it as well. They start pulling in the line as the shark continues to circle, and they come out saying, yeah, there's a shark down there. Checking the sonar, they now see it, the outline of the shark. So, rather than send the people in, you could have just used sonar the whole time. Seems like a bit of a ridiculous risk. Thus, he will be named Sergeant Hamfist from now on for this stupid ham-fisted attempt at being smart. He then blames her for endangering his team. And listen here, hard ass, pretty sure she told you not to dive, but you had just to be a big shot, didn't you? Had to open up your mouth. Wow, that's really old lyrics. Anyways, going to yell at the Aquatic Justice League, Sophia yells at Mika. Mika says it was Sophia's fault for the attack 3 years ago. Dude, I hope you get eaten. These French films just get me sometimes, because it's like people aren't like this in real life. Later that night, Sergeant Hamfist then watches some videos of Sophia realizing, you know, maybe she is a shark expert. So bizarre. So Blue Hair then talks to a bunch of randoms about saving the shark as everyone drops an emotional load in their pants and are now inspired to save the shark because evidently that means if we save the shark, the world belongs to us. Okay, like, shouldn't you guys be going to school or something or like getting a job? I don't know. You seem bored is all I'm saying. So Sergeant Hamfist then goes to meet with Sophia and apologize. He's got a meeting with the mayor of Paris later and he wants her to come with. Being told a shark is in the water though, she suggests perhaps they should evacuate the city and retreat further inland. It's in their blood after all. Actually, what she really says is they're gonna go do nothing. Thank you, Wish version of Scarlett Johansson. So Sophia says it's experienced huge behavioral shifts. The guy there says, yes, we know about your team and we don't care. So because her team got eaten, that hurts her credibility somehow. Yes, I'm sure like that wouldn't mean she's more experienced with these things. Of course, she's dealing with politicians, which in fact, they do fancy themselves the smartest people in the room, but really, they couldn't be more idiotic and they could not be more useless. Sorry, I really don't like politicians. Like all politicians. It's not anybody in particular. I just don't like politicians. So the mayor then says the state has spent $1.7 billion on this, and you guys will figure it out. Exiting out of the office, they will need to lure the shark with the shark bait, ooh-ha-ha, and once tranked, they will take it to the locks, splashing blood and chum everywhere as they didn't close the tops of the lids like at all. Nicely done. They've already begun chumming the waters near themselves, so evidently the trank only works for about 30 minutes. Ben then shows up telling Sophia what happened. Her team entered the catacombs to stop them from taking out the shark, and how do they plan on doing this? Well, with the power of a drum circle and edibles, I imagine. Ben reactivated the beacon so that they could find it, and basically she pressed the power button because it even says it's like, wow, it was actually easier than I thought. Amazing. So the shark is now deep in the catacombs, basically massive underwater lakes, and surely this wouldn't be a stupid idea. Using a massive abandoned interest that evidently time forgot existed, they keep tracking the shark, which has now tracked them as they come across the team's paddleboards. And I'm curious as to how this team expected to trap this shark and even transport it. This was definitely developed while they were all high. Everyone is quite literally just kind of hanging out near the water's edge with a giant shark in there, as Ben drops a beach ball in the water, which sends out pulses that maps the area that they're in. Okay, so after deploying the resonator, the cops put in a request for backup, and I don't know why they didn't do this earlier. So the cops then emerge to tell the dream team congregated there that it's time to leave. Burning Man is officially over. So as the cops tell them it's gotta get out in an orderly fashion, the sharks begin approaching as Mika is still in the water. Ben says the shark is coming, and Mika begins realizing, you know what, this plan was kind of dumb. Like a toddler came up with this idea. Does it warrant being eaten? No. But is it a really dumb idea? Yes. there are now 2 sharks as she had a baby, and she begins touching the baby's face as Mika ignores all of the warnings of Sophia, the actual shark expert, as Sophia says this is a nest, and Mika's like, oh, she won't hurt anyone. And she bases that line of thinking on absolutely nothing. Mika decides to just sort of hang out as Sergeant Hamfist jumps in to grab her. Swimming towards her, he grabs her just in time for her to get grabbed and brought up super high by the shark.
Yes, yes, yes!
Seriously, it doesn't warrant the end of her life, but Darwinism is the law of nature, not a suggestion of it. So Mika is taken under and then ripped in half by baby shark that she was petting. I guess it was kind of dangerous.
Yes!
Like, these are just animals. They're not bonding with you for no reason. What did you think was gonna happen? So everyone begins panicking, which is totally unnecessary, because they're out of the water where it's safe, as a bunch of others begin falling in hilariously. No, our high times idea totally didn't pan out, super bro. So the Guardians of the Globe are now disbanded. All you had to do was not do what you just did. And this is why you don't run at the pool. Ben gets pushed in and knocked out and looks like she drowns. So this group is now pretty much done, as all of the, authority and hierarchy of it has just been eaten or drowned, as now it becomes a feeding frenzy. Good lord, y'all. So in right proper fashion, they begin to retreat out of the area, missing legs and arms as the cops start getting grabbed too. So I thought the plan was to avoid a panic, as Leo emerges though. Crikey, he's got an arm off, and as he's grabbed again, he's pulled back into the depths, meaning one of the cops has been eaten. Ouchies. The hospitals are now inundated with those who were attacked. And as it pans out though, one guy is just sort of straight tapping a syringe for hours. Must be the end of his shift, as everyone is not super jazzed about what transpired. And later that morning, Sergeant Hamfist goes to talk to Sophia as she cries. And I mean, you knew Mika for 4 days? 3 of those days were spent insulting you? She was just kind of a jerk the whole time. I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I wouldn't feel it, but maybe she's in touch with her emotions. Who knows? Sophia for some reason also is like, oh, it's my fault. Dude, you tried to warn everybody. Nobody was listening to you. It's an animal. How is this your fault? Even a marginal amount of thinking lets you know that these people walked into a meat grinder of their own volition. So that's their problem. Meanwhile, back at the murder nest, they then find the baby shark is floating at the top of the water. I'm guessing that hippie probably had something maybe that affected the chemicals inside of the baby shark, I'm guessing? Perhaps? Anyways, Sophia investigates the issue and finds it's bleeding from its gills. Perhaps its own ability to deal with fresh water is not as adept as its mother, and as a result, this has caused these sensitive tissues to swell and burst. Evidently, they adapted to the river, and Paris is the place that can support a unique ecosystem. Of course, later on, I'm pretty sure while they're doing an autopsy on this thing, I did see maybe a hole in the side of its head, so maybe it did take a round. But cutting open the shark, she then finds babies indicating that it was already preganinant. The teeth suggest that it's only about 2 months old, but the shark reproduces by parthenogenesis. She is a new species, and if they don't stop her, they will all reproduce wildly out of control. So now these may seem like pretty strange events until you learn about the actual shark reproduction method, which you are actually about to learn about, so strap in. Sharks typically will reproduce sexually, with mako sharks in particular being ovoviviparous. This means that eggs they have are actually internally fertilized as the embryos form, and then the sharks are birthed as living swimming organisms. Along with that, interestingly, internally, the embryos will eat one another as they form, which is pretty metal. The purpose of sexual reproduction is simply to help diversify the genes in a species, preventing one disease from wiping out the entire population. But asexual reproduction is fairly useful as well. It is known that some sharks are capable of doing this, and this is known as parthenogenesis. An unfertilized egg can form a shark, but it does not produce this much young. Being an exact copy of the mother, it's almost like a do-over for the genetic line if the mother takes too long to find a mate. In fact, a hammerhead shark in Nebraska aquarium gave birth without mating recently, which surprised many scientists, as they were thought to just previously have only reproduced sexually. And this means mako sharks could also reproduce sexually if they had difficulty finding a partner. And given the size that this mako shark is, it may be that males of her own species didn't classify her as a breedable partner, producing the first female incel shark. That was stupid, but you get the point. Because of this may be why her body shifted towards parthenogenesis as opposed to trying to reproduce sexually. This, along with the interference of plastics in her endocrine system with a potential cancer growing in her brain, caused her to look and behave in ways that made parthenogenesis the only form she was capable of engaging in. Not to mention, considering how quickly she grew, she's very much so likely on an accelerated timeline concerning her own body. So if enough time passes and sharks naturally kind of go towards parthenogenesis, then potentially this is why she was able to do it. Now, with that said, the offspring being born already pregnant indicates a ton of changes to the biochemistry. Clearly, parthenogenesis is the chosen pathway due to some sort of internal signaling in the body that indicates, hey, we aren't getting laid and we need to have some offspring. As a result, this signaling appears broken in the offspring right out of the gate, meaning that the eggs the offspring are born with immediately enter a state of growing into fully formed sharks almost as soon as the shark is born. And this is likely how it died, unless the bullet wound is anything to go off of, because its body was inundated with this pressure internally along with malnutrition from its own increased growth because of the hundreds of clones all vying for nutrition as well. It's likely all sharks that were born have an extremely shortened lifespan, as their bodies would be basically burning the candle at all ends to keep up with the nutritional needs of the offspring they were born with. So over at the mayor's office, they get chewed out for doing exactly what they were supposed to do, because, politicians, as Sophia tells them, hey, there's a shark there, you need to cancel the triathlon. This is literally Jaws, but on a river in Paris. The cops, though, are relieved of their duty as the army is now in charge. The mayor says, the sharks are perfectly harmless to humans. And what sort of crack is this mayor smoking? While they don't typically hunt humans, in no way, shape, or form are they perfectly harmless. Heading over to a bar, Sergeant Handfist is frustrated as he can't help with the shark. Sophia says that they have to do something to stop the triathlon or get the shark out of there. Sophia asks why Sergeant Handfist left the army, and he said it was because he was scared, so he retreated to the police force. Now, I myself have not dealt with that, but my girlfriend who's a captain kind of laughed at him. Anyways, so Sophia now makes a move, but it doesn't work, and he asks her what they should do and what kind of is her plan. Hitting up the team, they then volunteer to help as one guy has a family and is like, nah, I'm gonna choose them, but I'll cover for you. Basically, all they have to do is set the charges, blow the tunnel, trap the shark. Just sitting into the water, then find some phones, some trash, a whole bunch of hippie wear, and some other stuff because it's just like a broken area leading into the catacombs. Entering, Operation Cannot Possibly Fail a second time commences. Securing the bridge, triathlon starts as snipers are setting up as well as turrets. I guess that is preferable. The cops then show up as the military is in charge as she calls out and lets her team know that the military won't let them pass. The mayor begins her walk though as the press then talks to her. She says every precaution was taken and not to worry about it. Yes, a thin net has been applied that was lazily attached to some chains. Remember the first rule of shark safety: have fun. So as the triathlon kicks off, the mayor goes to give a speech. The chief then calls in her team as the military lets them pass. Down in the catacombs, they pass scenic skull pillars as Sophia takes a hold of the grill master. As the team then sits in the catacombs, which is somehow even worse than cave diving, they find hundreds of sharks above them. Not an ideal situation. One shark then buzzes the tower on him, as then Timu, Scarlett Johansson, continues to give her speech as everyone is super jazzed at the start of the event. Firing off a shot, the triathlon begins as everyone starts sounding like a bunch of struggling fish. Very good. Getting the diving gear on, one of the cops then rolls backwards off the boat because if he were back at the catacombs, Sophia swims ahead with 2 turntables and a microphone as she sets it and begins releasing the rhythmic beating noises calling the larger shark. This was never explained why this gets the shark to come to them. Calling to the other cops to figure out where they are, they then set the charges but can't seem to find the progenitor shark. They cut the grate to help everyone get out as they finish setting the charges. Sophia keeps saying, "The big shark isn't here!" Yeah, no kidding, nobody's seen it. So as the concussive force detonator expert swims away, he's immediately torn apart by the entire group of sharks. Now it becomes a nice game of don't get grabbed by the sharks. Adama then goes over and grabs the charge and immediately gets bitten by several sharks like the guy that just came before him. Surely they had to have known that that stupidity was going to happen. The sharks then start moving in, kind of swarming on everyone as Sergeant Handfist tries to get back to his half-eaten co-worker as the charges blow. Their organs are now 100% liquid. Unnecessarily driving the boat around, but seriously, they just do a giant circle for some reason. Sophia and Handfist emerge, having survived somehow. No shot that was going to happen, as that compressional wave that just went through their body was totally going to destroy them. You need to understand that compressional waves are really bad for your nervous system and your organs. We are talking about ruptured lungs, brain damage, heart problems, and this is all because while the shock wave moves through your body, it is deforming and tearing at connection points on a cell-by-cell basis. And you know, your neurons really like to maintain their connections. This can cause micro tears, causing fluid buildup rapidly, leading to even more issues, or like paralysis as your body continues to struggle. And if the damage is high enough, while you may still be technically together, your body is just shredded internally, which leads to a flatline. So they get asked where the rest of the cops are, as she reports back everyone else got eaten. Nice. She descends back down into the water for funsies to make sure she got the big one, of which she never really saw like it was contained at all. The catacombs are sealed, but actually not really. The shark is able to break through because of course it was able to do that. It would totally know that this wasn't just a wall or something. So as it swims past Sophia, giving her the finger, she begins to ascend. Swimming to the boat, it immediately gets hit as the officers are thrown into the water, and one by one the cops are eaten. Sophia and Handfist swim towards the flip boat as the other guy gets bitten in half, ouchies. And at this point the shark then circles the boat, and hearing tasty swimmers not too far away, the giant shark immediately heads towards the swimmers and breaks the chains. This ravenous hunger is likely fueled by the fact that if it doesn't constantly eat, its own body size would end it along with all of the forming sharks within her. So as everyone thrashes around like a hurt animal, many of the swimmers start getting picked off one by one, which totally sucks. One woman yells out that there's a shark as the swimmers stop swimming, making themselves easy targets as one guy gets totally grabbed. Surely, this is going to be bad for the swimmer economy. The army then starts firing wildly into the water, which is hilarious as there's a ton of live shells from World War II down there that they were not made known. Like, oh, well, let's not tell them. Let's straight up give them things that can pierce the water relatively deep, but not tell them what's actually down there in case they, hit anything. So the last remaining cop then shows up and grabs Handfist and Sophia, as the shark then starts taking a ton of rounds at this point, as some of the rounds start concussively detonating, which stirs up even more of the rounds. As everyone panics, the rounds keep going off as they drop people into the water, which then creates a giant wave. Nice. So they put a camera into dryer tumble mode, as then the area is completely flooded, which makes very little sense as to why this would be a sustained flood. Sergeant Handfist was luckily able to float while unconscious, as then she drags him over to a rooftop, or at least some sort of roof thing. Looking out, the entire area is flooded as the sharks have survived and are now patrolling all the waters. Literally just wait 3 minutes, and they will be stranded there as the water rushes back into the Seine. So as they zoom out, the entire place is flooded, which is hilarious. This is not what would happen, you gotta be joking me. And thus concludes Under Paris. So what is the actual feasibility of this? While hybridized sharks exist and microplastics can cause cancers to form within animals, or at least it seems like it can. I don't want to put my stamp of approval on that because we still don't know specifically what microplastics are doing. There is almost no chance of this leading to a runaway parthenogenesis event. There is a reason this process is not easily accomplished and startling when it happens. Life itself, more so with multicellular organisms, needs the information from another parent in order to form viable young typically. Along with that, changing the environment, along with the perfect storm of growth and young, is more likely to put so much strain on the body that it would drop from an overproduction of cortisol because it's a lot of stress. Something like this would need a ton of evolutionarily significant events that happen over an entire population that would take place over millions of years. So for this to take place in 3 years in one individual, it's not happening. But if all of this, as described, were to happen, then sure, it would be possible. But what is the likelihood of that? It's not happening. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, then leaving a like is greatly appreciated, and subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on what I post. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and Roanoke Tales channel link, but speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death's Dancer, and Feather. Thank you very much for your support. Next, I'd like to thank our scientists, Argent Sentinel, Dakota23, Lucian Dragon, Metric System, and Trash Panda in a trench coat. Thank you guys as well, and the rest of my patrons, I do appreciate y'all's support. You are absolute ballers. Alright, so that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.